segment for leisure-orientated double cabs has been a very competitive one in South Africa for a very long time. And in fact, the Toyota Hilux has been the king of that particular castle for almost as long as we can remember. But as that vehicle became older, the Ford Ranger came along, and suddenly there was a vehicle that was younger and more adventurous and begged to be customized.
And of course, Volkswagen's got their own recipe on the lifestyle bakkie, and that's to make it more car-like and more user-friendly on an everyday basis. And what we have are two of South Africa's most expensive bakkies, and at first glance, it's not that easy to decide which one is the better option.
Well, let's find out.
You could consider this evaluation a comparison between traditional double cab thinking, as represented by the Ford Ranger, and a somewhat more new age approach, as expressed by the Volkswagen Amarok. As we'll see, these two vehicles have a lot in common, especially when it comes to the physical size and the utility potential of these two rivals. But there are also some very real differences, particularly as far as engine design and 4x4 drivetrain are concerned. Let's start with a closer look at the styling though.
The Ford Ranger was updated last year, and the result is a bold, almost American truck-style bakkie. This Wildtrack version has that sort of customized look about it, and in fact, it even begs for more. It's no wonder you see so many pimped-up versions.
By comparison, the Amarok is a lot more sophisticated. It has been described as the Jetta of the bakkie world, which might be a little bit unfair, but it certainly is a lot more conservative. This top-of-the-range Ultimate version gets some nice extras, like bi-xenon headlights with LED daytime running lights and 19-inch wheels.
The cosmetic approach of these two double cabs may be very different, but when it comes to sheer size, there's little to choose between the two. The Ranger is longer and also has a longer wheelbase, but the Amarok is wider and taller, and even then the differences are small. The Amarok's ground clearance is best at 244mm, just 7mm more than the Ranger's. The Amarok is lighter than the Ranger, but makes do with a less powerful engine, which means that even the power-to-weight ratio is pretty evenly matched at 67.5 kilowatt per tonne for the Ranger and 66.6 kilowatt per tonne for the Amarok. However, step into the cabin and you'll find significant differences.
Just like the styling, the interior of the Wildtrack is pretty extrovert with a mix of colours and materials and no fewer than 3 colour screens for the various bits of driver information. It's not what you'd call an ergonomic masterpiece, but it still is very comfortable with a long list of standard spec and solid build quality. Accommodation on the rear bench seat is comfortable enough, although the seat design favours 2 rather than 3 occupants. Up front, there really are too many buttons and switches to be considered user-friendly though. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the Amarok is a lot more smart and sophisticated and arguably more car-like than the Wildtrack. With its soft leather, its decent spec list and a brilliant driving position, it is very comfortable indeed, even though it's not the most exciting place to be. The Amarok feels roomy and the rear seat easily copes with 3 passengers. The finishes and materials look and feel smart, and the control layout is efficient and intuitive, benefiting ergonomic efficiency.
The Ford Ranger and the Volkswagen Amarok both have turbodiesel engines, and they both feature 4-wheel drive, but that's where the similarities end. The Ford Ranger has a big capacity 3.2-litre 5-cylinder turbodiesel engine that sounds and feels beefy, and it has a proper 4-wheel drive system, selectable between 4x2, 4x4 and 4x4 low range. That low-range transfer case is vital for tackling real off-road terrain, allowing a level of low-speed, high-traction traversability that makes the Ranger almost unstoppable, regardless of terrain. The sophisticated and high-tech Volkswagen Amarok has an engine to match. It's a smaller 2-litre unit, but it is a bi-turbodiesel, and it's linked to an 8-speed automatic gearbox, which is unique in the segment. That spread of ratios is pretty wide, which is just as well, because the first gear is almost a donkey gear, which makes up for the fact that it hasn't got low range at all. Instead, it relies on the wider spread of its 8 gear ratios, together with full-time 4-wheel drive, a Torsen center diff, and a raft of electronic aids to tackle the rough stuff. As a result, the Amarok is surprisingly competent off the road, but it can't match the outright traction of the transfer case-equipped Ranger when the terrain becomes truly challenging. That makes the Amarok more of a country roads 4x4 than a pucker off-roader. But its full-time four-wheel drive system isn't just useful off the road, it delivers sure-footed traction on both tar and gravel. Add the wide scope of the ratios and presence of a diff lock, and the Amarok will still take you to places normal buckies never would.
Join us after the break for part 2 of our double cab shootout, and a new Audi Q3 joins our long-term fleet.
This summer, I am returning to you with the most thrilling of adventures. I've fully packed it with my renowned predictability. I've added in a bit of my lack of thrills. And I've topped it all off with my habit of making no mistakes. I am a Continental tire with maximum braking performance.
It's difficult to imagine what our new fuel can do for your car, so we're going to show you. Finally, performance and economy come together. Engine Premax Unleaded. Engine. With us, you are number one.
Welcome back to RPM TV and part 2 of our double cab comparison.
As much as these two vehicles are both leisure-orientated, their owners will expect a measure of workhorse capability. And certainly, they both look large and quite purposeful, and they have a decent-sized load bed as well.
In fact, out of the two, the Amarok has the larger load space, but at 938 kilograms, the Ranger can carry 100 kilograms more than the Amarok. The Amarok, though, does have better ground clearance and better approach and departure angles, although the absence of low range is a bit of a negative.
There's another shortcoming common to both of these double cabs. That cargo bay may add useful workhorse capability, but it's not secure, and you'll need to spend more money to add a canopy or a lockable load bay cover to provide secure stowage for luggage, laptop bags, shopping and the like.
Also, let's not forget that most 4x4 double cab buckies end up being used for day-to-day commuting, which is understandable given the investment required to own one of these machines. So even those owners intent on taking these vehicles off the beaten track end up using them for everyday driving, with the rough stuff making up a relatively small percentage of overall use. In that context, the on-road comfort and performance of a 4x4 double cab could be considered as important as its all-terrain talent.
The Ford Ranger has more power, more torque and a slightly better power-to-weight ratio than the Amarok. But having said that, it doesn't feel that much faster. In fact, I'd say dynamically, the vehicles are quite evenly matched. Ford doesn't tell us what this vehicle does in terms of 0 to 100 and top speed, but we reckon 0 to 100 in about 11 seconds, top speed around 185 kilometers an hour, and those figures are quite similar to those of the Amarok. In practice, the Ford's large 3.2-litre turbodiesel engine has more usable low-down grunt, however, and its delivery of torque and power is more linear than the smaller-engined Amarok. That's especially useful when operating in low range or at low speeds, but the drivetrain isn't as refined as the Amarok's.
If you had to pick one strength the Amarok has over the Ranger, it would be the 8-speed gearbox, which is slicker, and as a result, progress in here feels a lot better. The steering is heavier, although it is also better calibrated, so the Amarok feels a little bit more agile. As for ride comfort, well, it's good by bucky standards in both our test cars, although arguably the 19-inch wheels in the Amarok Ultimate aren't the best for off-road. That yet again highlights perhaps the biggest difference between the two vehicles. The Amarok seeks to find a useful balance between on-road comfort and off-road capability by providing a driving experience that's almost car-like regardless of terrain. Its full-time four-wheel drive also continuously ensures composure on tar and gravel. When it gets to the really tough stuff, the Ranger is clearly superior. The Ford Ranger Wildtrack and the Volkswagen Amarok Ultimate are two very different sides to the same coin. On the one side, the Ranger is the younger, more adventurous option, and it's attracted a whole new kind of buyer to the segment. And that's probably the reason why you see so many pimped out Rangers on the road. That said, it is still a very competent off-roader and good on long distances as well.
The Amarok by comparison is sleek, elegant and sophisticated. In fact, everything that you would not expect of a bakkie. That also goes for the interior, which is luxurious and quite an interesting counterpoint to the Ford Ranger's younger, more brasher treatment. It also even feels more like a car than a bakkie. But it can't quite match the Ranger in terms of 4x4 capability, and in that sense, it's more of a weekend warrior than a gung-ho off-roader.
The Ford Ranger sticks to a large capacity 3.2-litre turbo diesel, while the Amarok follows the small capacity high-tech route with a 2-litre bi-turbo engine. The Ford has the power advantage and a low-range transfer case, but the Amarok gets a slick 8-speed auto box. The Amarok's lower curb mass means the two vehicles have a similar power-to-weight ratio and comparable performance. Claimed fuel consumption is similar too, although real-world consumption is thirstier for both.
The Ford Ranger looks bold and trendy, while low range delivers superior off-road capability. But the drivetrain can't match the Amarok's refinement, while the Volkswagen is also more sophisticated and more car-like in most other respects. Both vehicles are expensive, but the Amarok is the priciest. The optional sat-nav adds 30,000 Rand to the asking price.